Good evening, everyone. So this is our very first clinic session for grant writing mastery. So remember that it's structured into a 5-week process. That's beside the kickoff meeting. We're spending 5 weeks together where you get to go through the training workshops, and then you use the templates to implement what you learn from each of the modules. And then every week there are specific sections of the proposal template that you're meant to complete, and which will be reviewed by me, obviously, before the live sessions. And then the live sessions are for us to get together and then discuss what were the challenges, what were the learning points, what are your thoughts on the sections of the proposal that you have written. And then I'll just give a broad overview of what I observed from the reviews. But unfortunately for this week, I received only three documents were uploaded in time. I even had to push the review till this afternoon. I think that yesterday it was only 2 from Funzile and Fumi. And then Folake sent in hers, I think was it earlier today or later yesterday. So we could only review about 3 proposals out of a class that is supposed to be like 10 or 13, 12 of you. Okay, so we need to do much better, because as the weeks go by, the work piles up quickly. And this is aside your itinerary for the week, your job, your businesses, your activities. And so by the time you leave out, or maybe you shift the work for week 1, it piles up with the activities for week 2. And before you know, you are overwhelmed. So I encourage us as much as possible to focus each week and complete the specific sections of the proposal in time, so that I can review before our meeting. The meeting is not meant to go to do any training or anything, because you all have the trainings in your toolkit. There's nothing I'm going to share about those topics again that will be new. You have very detailed, elaborate trainings in those toolkit. Here is for us to have a conversation, for us to get support. If there are gray areas of the workshops that were not so clear, and then you need more clarity, or you need specific directions for the projects that you're doing. So we have only 3 proposals review for this week, and my expectation is that by next week everyone would have caught the, should I say, the vibes, go with the flow, and ensure that every week we're all doing the sections, the different sections of the proposal on a week-to-week basis. So today, I think we're going to be spending about an hour, 30 minutes or so, because it's not a very large class like the July cohort where we had 23 participants. So we're just going to be looking at you sharing your experience from going through the classes, the training for week 1, working through the section of the proposal for you that have done that. For some of you that have done the review and you've seen my comment this afternoon, what do you think about them, or if there are additional information that you require? And then we'll talk about donor expectations for week 1 as you're working through your problem analysis, the analysis section or the justification section of your proposal. And then we'll look at the focus for week 2, the trainings you're meant to go through, the task you're meant to do, how to approach them, and that will be it for tonight. So I want you all to share, for those of you that have gone through module 1. Module 1 talked about understanding the funder's interest and also doing your community needs assessment. So we're looking at it's about the beginning, before you even start to put together your project ideas, or to even say these are the activities you want to do. You need to understand issues from the funder's perspective, from the community's perspective, and then how these two will now form the foundation of the structure of your project. This is for you specifically when you are responding to a call for proposal. When you're responding to a call for proposal, it's a little bit different than when you have a project that is ongoing and then you're looking for funding for that specific project. In response to a donor call for application, it may be little adaptations that you have to do, probably because of what the funder might be interested in at that particular time. And maybe your project does not take into consideration all of the objectives that particular funder is interested in at that specific time. All right. So it's always, I want to encourage flexibility in the work we do, provided you're not going off the mission, your core mission, or the core purpose of what the organization has been set up to establish. As you approach this, the different applications, the different projects, have some form of adaptability and go creative, like I said, during the kickoff meeting, because things are changing really fast. Solutions that used to work before are no longer working again. Programs and projects that you could easily get funding for 5 years ago, 2 years ago, is no longer the same. You have to bring so much more. You have to offer so much more before proposals will scale through now. And that's the rigor of this 5 weeks, so that we've created this environment so that you're able to go through this and build this, take this into consideration as you were working on your project ideas. So I would like you to share for week 1. You've gone through the training. What was the learning? What did you learn? How did you build that into looking at that with the ideas you're working with? What are the linkages? What stood out for you? So I want to hear your thoughts. If there are challenges that you need clarity on, I want you all to share, because that's the focus of the clinic session. All right. So this is where you all open up your minds, and then we begin to have that conversation.
Who's going first?
Hello for me. Yes, you're going first.
Okay. Yeah, so if I saw your review, so you said I should make it more like an essay.
Yeah, that's
so what happened was that so I was trying to follow the problem tree.
Oh, I
If you see the way I went with it.
Yeah,
so
I saw the sections, the mini sections that you built into it. Okay.
Yeah. So I was following, so for the first draft, I was following that problem.
Okay.
So and it sort of makes you think, because as I said, since it's the first draft, so it was better for me to follow that sequence, so that I can follow how I can see how one thing leads to the next and leads to the next. And so and the way you put that problem tree, the example problem tree, I saw that, because you're saying ask why. And when you say why, then you ask another why, and ask another why, as in you can keep going deeper and deeper. And it makes you think a bit more.
Okay.
So yeah, so I like that that problem tree. And yeah, so that was but when it comes to needs, so part of it was let me say from personal experience, and then talking. So some of the things what I'm working on now is because I've spoken with like school counselors, principals, that we're still having this same issue. Even, I mean, I finished secondary school 1996.
Oh wow.
And and the problem is still the same. So it's interesting that the problem isn't really going away. I don't know, for others who are on the line, I don't know if they're actually interested. So I'm doing career development, and my let me say, the people who are very dear to me are those in GSS 3 moving into SS1.
Okay.
Yeah, so the first level is moving into SS1, because that's
where they make their choices of whether they're going into sciences or humanities. Okay.
Yes. So So like based on my experience, based on what I hear from principals and counselors, that it's still going on. And sometimes now, okay, before it was, I guess because for me, my parents weren't really forcing me to do anything. And I didn't really hear so much of it from my peers.
All right.
But when I started working, um, where I even had this idea to start this work was when I worked in a career service, and I saw younger people, mostly from Nigeria, Africa, Asia. Some of them didn't want to be there, but their parents had said they should do law, and I'm like, oh, okay. I didn't know that. I've watched it on TV, but I didn't know that people were that parents had this kind of influence on children, and to find that it's still going on now. So it's actually there are some children that they're following their friends, some they're forced to do one thing or the other, So these are the, those are the things that I was taking into consideration.
Consideration. Okay.
Yeah.
So, there's a difference, when we solve problems, you also need to look at some of the things you need to look at here is, am I the one going to fund this thing, or I want external stakeholders to fund it? If you are the key decision maker here in terms of funding, you can do anything you like. Nobody's going to question you. I mean, it's your business. But once you're opening this up to say that grant funding, it just has to go the way of the donor. It just has to make sense to the funder, not just making sense to you, the initiator, or maybe even to your friend, or maybe some other person. If it makes sense to you, makes sense to principals, and doesn't make sense to the donor, we're not going anywhere. That's one of the lessons I've learned. You may have something that in your mind, but this thing is needed. But when it comes to the table of the evaluator who is going to make the decision, or who is going to make the recommendation of whether this project is going to get money or not, is their interest, is how they are saying it, is what matters to them. Okay. So I understand that you were trying to follow the problem tree framework. 1 minute. 1 minute. Let me take my daughter back to the room. So like I was saying, the project has to make sense from the perspective of the funder, not just to us as the people developing this project, because we're not the one funding it at this point, or we're framing it not because we want to fund it, but because we need a donor to put money into the idea. And so I am very particular about the need assessment or the need analysis, the problem analysis. We cannot work on speculation. We cannot create a project and then, especially in responding to a donor call for proposal or seeking for grant funding, without strong evidence, without strong data, so that we do not project ourselves as though we have developed something based on assumptions or based on speculation. All right. And so that's one of the reasons why in the class, talking about the problem analysis, you saw that I was talking about different perspectives, not just what you have observed, what have other stakeholders observed, what did they say the gap is, and then what is research or data, especially from in development organizations. What is UNICEF saying about that situation? Or other associated organizations, because we know UNICEF is the one that has to do, the agency that has to do with education for children. What are they saying about this problem? What are other credible development organizations such as the UNICEF are saying? What is the Ministry of Education in Lagos State, where you're piloting this from? What are they saying about it? The principals and all that, and the different stakeholders that you had these conversations with, are they validating the same challenge that you talked about? that's one question that needs to check out as you are approaching that section of the proposal. And two, it's a good thing that, okay, first you first outlined it, but it's a draft. So as you brainstorm, you can follow that flow to say, okay, this is the challenge or the need or the gap that I want to solve. And these are the root causes, you know, asking your multiple whys. And then this are the experiences of the population, or this is the impact or the effect or consequences on the population. When we are able to connect all these different information together in the narrative so that it makes sense, whoever is going to make that decision, because you will not be there to defend your project, that document is going before you. And so it must have all the elements that will make a strong case before whoever is going to evaluate that proposal. And one thing, I don't know if I dropped it as a comment, the way you frame the core problem, poor subject choices, is that what the problem really is? Recall in 2021 when we were having a conversation, trying to build your log frame, and we're like, you are trying to do something that is more preventive.
Yes.
You're trying to do, because I remember that conversation, you're trying to do something that is more preventive. So one thing I would have to tell you is you need to do some bit of research. You need to research, because fine, the program might be running functionally the way you are doing it. You have some supporters supporting you. Parents might even be paying to access the coaching program and all of that. But funders may not want it that way. Funders may want it more from a structural perspective, meaning more like from a policy angle, so that it is more sustainable. So if it's just you, that means when you stop the program, children will keep making those wrong choices and all of that. But if you're building it in a way that you are engaging key decision makers within the education value chain, especially in the public sector, seeing how these key stakeholders within that sector can begin to try to transform the way education works, or even within a school, not just you going to do and leave, but you are empowering the school with the capacity to provide that structured guidance to children. So it becomes a framework within the school so that it can be sustainable. When you leave at the end of the project, they can say, oh, it is because of this project that was funded by this donor. That's why we have this framework working. That's why we have this capacity. If we take the U element out of the program and there's no benefit left, it's not a grant-worthy project, unfortunately. It may work, you're doing it on your own, it's going well, parents are paying for coaching programs, but that's not the case here. We're trying to pitch a program to a funder, and then these are the different elements. If our $50,000 funding ends, that means everything, the benefit, everything is going to end. We're back to where we are. So if you look at the project and the way you have structured it, from the problem analysis to what you're thinking that the solution would be, if they remove you and everything collapses, it's not a good project. It's not a good project. So I want you to do a bit more, take your time and research. If it means researching similar programs in other countries, because there's nothing we want to do that is entirely new. There's one form of existing somewhere. Find out and do research. Look at publications from UNICEF, even if it's a publication that has to do with another third world or another developing country, to try to see, you know, how they framed this problem, what's the discussion, what's the conversation around it. More better if you can find materials that have to do with the African continent, because that's where we're looking at. And then look at your analysis and begin to, especially that core problem, is a choice of subjects. So you need to rework, even my mind, I'm just trying to rethink how it can work. But that core problem, to say that there's the gap you're trying to bridge is subject choices, is not really biting enough.
So that time it was something that we were talking about. I was saying unemployment, but you were saying that unemployment
is too far. It's very far, because this is someone who is 10 years old. You can't be having the conversation of unemployment. All right. So I want you to think through, do a bit of more research and try to clog these gaps so that the analysis will make more sense. Meanwhile, reframe it to ensure is a flow. Look through the proposal and the toolkit and see how the flow of the essay, okay? All right, thank you for sharing for me. So
Thank you.
who's next? Folake. Let me call the Folake, we have a similar. Are you here?
Yes.
Okay. So would you like to share? Good evening to you.
Any what did you say?
Okay, I said, would you like to share? We're just talking about the experience from the training, watching the training and try to build the problem analysis section. Did you get to see my comments on that section of your document?
I haven't seen the comments. I can quickly check it now. Okay.
So there was a part I said, is this supposed to be here? You said this research, and I'm wondering where that component came from.
Okay. This seems like a repetition. Oof, it is not clear. I will need to go through.
Okay, so while you're figuring that out, Otis, yours came in. I have not even looked at it because by the time you submitted, I was already preparing for putting things. So your own is like crossover to the next review. But I want you to share going through the workshop for the first module and then engaging with the document. What was the experience like for you? What were the learning points? What are the gaps, challenges you have that we can then provide support for in this clinic session?
Okay, wow. Thank you once again for the opportunity. The workshop was really enlightening and I think it's very comprehensive too. So my shortcoming was that I got to just listen to it once. I had quite a few challenges over the week with my gadgets, my phones. There was the crash, so I had to get a new phone.
What?
And yes, so I lost everything, all my previous chats and everything. So I actually worked late. So I went through the course, but I think it's something that one needs to go through not just once because it's comprehensive. If you go through it, you should be able to break it down and then use it to even evaluate every phase. Like you said, that the problem statement is very, very important. I think it's like the foundation of the whole proposal writing. So it's not something that one wants to rush. So whatever it is that I did there was kind of a rush work.
Don't worry, you go back and do the complete work that I will review.
No problem. But at least I just wanted to make sure that I submitted something so that I won't be the bad student.
You want to give me double work. I understand. I know how your schedule works and the kind of job you do. So I understand that. But the reality is, in real life, that we're going to have those same experiences. You may have a deadline, you may see an opportunity that you are qualified for. It's a good fit for your organization, and the deadline is just 5 days away. This one, you have 5 weeks to finish the entire document. But this, in reality, I'm not sure you have 5 weeks for that proposal because of all the multiple things. And it may be that it's not just that one call for proposal that you want to respond to or you want to pursue. You have like 4 other proposals with the same deadline timelines for submission. Okay. And so because of that, those personal performance enhancement habits, like, okay, I'm going to spend 1 hour on this thing today or 30 minutes on this thing today and see what I can do. So you don't lump up things together. And then, so for me, thank you very much for the feedback on the fact that the class was comprehensive. It's one of the reasons why I just said, you know what, all these master classes, that's what we're going to be using for grant writing mastery. There's no need reinventing the wheel and then doing the same training over again. that's why we have this current model, and I'm happy that you find it really comprehensive. So what were are there any areas that it wasn't too clear, looking at bringing it back to the project that you really want to work on? Are there areas that you still find it quite challenging and you need some form of clarity on?
Well, like I said, it's something that I would love to also go through again, but
Okay.
I already said it's very comprehensive, and I think if one should take his time to listen over and over again, he'll be able to pick, because what I noticed is that you are trying to pass a whole lot of information within a very, very short time so that the classes are not too long.
Too long,
So
yeah.
one needs to listen over and over again, ruminate on some specific points and apply them
Yeah.
very well, because it's not just about listening and you just hear that, okay, you are supposed to do this, you're supposed to do this, you're supposed to do this, and then you just get everything vaguely. It's something that I really want to get imbibed in me, so that even when you are writing such unconsciously, you are applying all of the principles that you outlined. You know, there were different principles, the three principle and all of that.
Okay.
Also,
Alright.
but the thing that I noticed is that it's in fact the same thing that I said from the beginning, from last week. The specificity. You know, what I do is kind of how will I put it now? It's broad. You know, our own economic
You
empowerment
want to save the whole world. Most of you here, you want to save the whole world. But it would be better if you solve one very specific problem, you know, even
Yes.
yeah, like that, especially when anybody coming into the social impact space is really very passionate, and then you have multiple problems you want to solve. But the best way to be very effective is to pick a specific need that is, in fact, you don't need to explain too much for someone to understand that this is a problem.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah. So
undeniable that this is a gap. So find that very wide gulf within the population that you're working with, aligned with your mission. And then for you, it's not hard because you're working with young people. And we know that right now, even from before now and tomorrow, the problem still remains a high level of unemployment and the economic vulnerability that young people in Nigeria or even across the African continent face. So it's not even hard for some of us that are struggling, like those of us in healthcare and trying to do career development. You need to really find what is the key issue that will make sense to address.
So, yes, like so what I noticed, or what I'm trying to do, is what I set out to do, because I looked at the template call for proposal, the one with the US Embassy stuff. I went through it, then I saw how they categorized what the qualification for those who they were calling for. Then I looked at what I've been doing. So what I'm trying to do, or what I set out to do, I don't know if I'm wrong, with this course or with this whole 5-week training now, is to do a very, very elaborate work. Then I can now streamline, so that when I see opportunities, I can just from there pick and okay, this attends to part of what we're doing. I can now do a more detailed and specific work. I don't know if that would work.
So what my advice would be, by the time you want to do a very elaborate project, you will get confused. By the time you get to the section where you're dealing with how the program works, you will get confused. When you get to the monitoring and evaluation, it will become so complex. So do not be too elaborate. Find a balance to ensure that it makes sense. You're dealing with one problem. If you're focusing on unemployment, focus on unemployment. If you're focusing on
okay, maybe I was saying the reason why I'm talking about being elaborate is you know, when it comes to economic empowerment, there are different facets with which you can empower
People,
these folks. But when it comes to how the project works, say for example, the project that I've chosen now is one idea amongst the various methods that we have.
among the various pathways the possible pathways to address the problem.
Exactly. There's this, let me just state it, there's this mobile empowerment train idea that we came up with. So that's the one I'm working on. So it's still specific. It's just maybe when I was talking about being broad, I was talking about the various
the different ideas that can actually address it. And by the time you're working through, you also need to understand the peculiarity of the population you're working with.
Yeah.
There are some populations, the mobile empowerment train may not work. So you need to find out, okay, for this specific population, every context is different for their behaviors, the challenges they face. By the time you sit back with the training again and you're working on the document, you look at the expertise of your organization. Like by the time we get into week 2, because for next week, we're moving into week 2 for project design. And there's some key principles I shared to consider now that you have done your analysis. One project cannot solve all of the things that you have identified in that analysis. So what criteria should you follow to pick a particular critical pathway for the project you want to solve? So there are things to consider, from your expertise to the key population to what the funder is interested in. Because when you look at the call for proposal, or the document that the funder has published to say we are putting out this funding, there may be very key activities that they will tell you we are not willing to fund. And so whatever pathway you're choosing also has to align with what they are willing to fund. So for instance, if you're doing a health intervention, and then the funder is your critical pathway that you are considering is, we would like to refurbish existing primary health centers, or what would want to build a hospital. And then the funder is telling you that they will not do any capital investment in infrastructure like buildings or renovations. There's already a problem. So there are different ideas I don't want you to begin to think about the project right now, how the project will work. That is for week 2. Right now, try to understand the problem. Understand the problem right now for this specific population. Understand their specific experiences, the specific drivers. So for instance, in the Niger Delta, what are the core drivers of unemployment or economic vulnerability among young people? You find out that there are different cultural issues, cultural barriers, or there are mindsets that actually disempower this population. You begin to break it down. Do the analysis. Focus on the problem analysis. Forget about how the program is going to work in this first week. Just ensure that you understand all the key factors. What are the experiences? How is the problem manifesting? What other limitations are they experiencing as a result of this economic vulnerability? And then map the root causes. What are the issues? The why, like we said in the class. Map all of them together and get your clear picture. You can use papers to do your sketch and then identify all of these issues. And then when you go through the training for week 2, where we are talking about the program design and then how to write the narrative of your project, and then you begin to make the key decisions considering these key principles and the factors that we were sharing in the training for week 2 that you should consider before you frame a project. So for now, sometimes it's challenging, especially when you have existing projects. And then you easily want to come and discuss that current project the way it is in your proposal. That wouldn't work here. First of all, follow the framework, understand the problem, map it out, all the key issues, and then you may begin to see that maybe some of your existing projects have gaps as they are unable to address very important issues that you have identified in your analysis. And then those are the technical gaps in the existing project. So week 1 is problem analysis. Just focus on the problem and do an in-depth analysis of the problem first before you worry yourself about how the project is going to work. That's enough thing to worry about by the time you week 2. Remember, you have 2 trainings to go through, almost like 4 hours of training time. Okay. So thank you for sharing with us, Prince. Thank you. I
Thank
really
you. Thank you.
appreciate that. All right. Okay, so who else is going? Kofi. Really looking forward to your ideas that you're sharing. I'm expecting to see that business component coming. Hope you've had a good week.
Yeah, okay, good evening.
Yeah, good evening.
Yes, I had a very tough week. So,
Okay.
yeah, I just had to go to some other regions of Ghana to just
All right.
do some projects, do some audit stuff. So I've been away for I just returned to Accra
Okay, I think I got
this
your
this
message. Yeah.
yeah, I just returned to Accra. But regardless, so though I have not really been able to, have the opportunity, and unfortunately, the videos I needed internet, and I wasn't
Okay.
having accessibility. So,
All right.
but notwithstanding, I have thought through just after last section, and I
Okay.
think before I left, I was able to watch part of 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 the session
Okay.
on the first session on YouTube.
Okay.
Uh, so in terms of what I was trying to, I was using it to. So there's this I mentioned this organization which uh consists of, I mean, women-led businesses, right? So the World Bank and the African Development Bank has something called We Finance. We Finance, yeah, I think so. So it's a fund towards women businesses, right? And then as part of it, they have various programs and projects that they do, and uh, they as you mentioned last week, what they have is that they have quite a number of. I was just trying to go through my archives to see. So as we were talking, to see whether I can get the paper, but I need to find out where I saved it. But
All right.
then I've read it for some time ago. What it is that they have done a research to identify in terms of between men-led businesses and women-led businesses, the opportunities that are available, and the huge gap between reason why there's more focus on financing men-led businesses and as against women-led businesses. And sometimes I think one of the problems that they identified is also that women tends not to, especially women-led businesses, tend not to have a lot of, social capital, like influencers in public influencers that can also, open doors for them to access funding. So
Okay.
there's quite and it's very prevalent
It's like a
in
gender issue.
yes. So they identify that, and they also identify uh education. Okay, and in terms of education, they link it to the competencies, confidence of
Capacity
women to,
gaps. Yeah.
yeah. So that capacity gap, they actually say even some educated women do not have the confidence to approach financiers to search for funding,
Yeah.
because so those things are what those soft issues are one of the areas they tend to solve, right? And
Through whatever
yeah,
interventions
through
that they have
through
designed.
interventions that they have. So
Okay.
it's as I mentioned earlier, it's a collaboration between the World Bank and the African
African
Development
Development
Bank.
Bank.
So,
Okay.
yeah, so it's called We Finance or something like that.
From the little you have shared, it seems there's been some form of research that your partners or your stakeholders or your clients have started doing in order to understand these key gaps. There's some form of gender gap here around equitable access to funding opportunities for women-led businesses. So it could be framing the core problem for the proposal that you're going to be developing on their behalf from this perspective. But as you go through the training video, I'm also happy that you also have this investor readiness background. So it gives you a lot of advantage to kind of see it, balance the view between all the social impact, the change we want to achieve, and then the return on investment to make it make sense to funders. So I want you to bring in those elements into the analysis. And then I'm really looking forward to reading that part of the proposal. I'm looking forward to reading the project justification or the problem statement. I'm advising everybody to work towards an average of 500 words. Just try, because there are some opportunities that require you to just write 100 words about the gap or the need in the community or in the target population that you want to address. Why there are some proposals that you need to be elaborate to write like 2 pages of your problem analysis. So whatever the case you find yourself, whatever opportunity you're trying to take advantage of, you will not be caught off guard or you don't understand the kind of information you need to bring into that part of the proposal. So I'm looking forward to reading that from you, Kofi. Now that you're back in Accra, you could go through the training video for week 1 and then bring in all this research from your stakeholders and whatever survey that they have done, whatever interviews they've done with the key population, with these women-led businesses that validates the gap to say that, oh, there's really a gender gap there. Women are unable to access equal opportunities to financing or to business growth opportunities in order for them to advance their enterprises. I want to see those strong arguments within the document. I'm really expectant to see how it will all flesh out the program and all, and then the opportunities you begin to pursue on their behalf at the end of the program. So thank you for sharing. I really wished you had gone through it and you have that, but from the little you shared, there's some strong argument that you're bringing there for the project. So well done. Well
all right, thank you.
Okay, so Folake, have you been able to see the comments and then? Okay, so
Yes, I have.
Okay, so you share. Maybe I may need to look at the participant list so I don't skip anybody. So Folake, after you share, we'll have Esther talk about. I'll have to deal with Esther. And Esther, you're from, is it Rwanda, Esther?
Yes, from Rwanda.
Okay, so we'll take, after Fumi, we'll take, after Folake, we'll take Esther and then Fumzile, and then we'll go on like that. I'll just follow the participant list. I really want everybody to share, so that whatever gaps we can identify, we can close those gaps, and then you can have a refined problem analysis section of your proposal document. So go ahead, Folake, and then Esther will
Yes.
be next.
Thank you. The videos were very educative and informative, and even though the idea that I'm working on is one that I came up with, I'm also trying to find similar programs that they funded, to see how those are structured, what the call for funding was, and the programs that get funded, what the structure and implementation was like. So trying to work on that. Based on your comments, yes, some of these parts, honestly, I didn't like the heading. I just put like the short heading there. I haven't I was still working through, the elaborate. And the thing is, in my head, once I decide I want to make sure I finish something, I get stuck, I can't move forward. So that's why I just left that part so that I could move on that. And then I would find the source, the second comment for the percentage and references that we put in there.
Okay.
I know there was one that you said seems like a repetition. So
the paragraph, the preceding paragraph. So the last paragraph meant exactly the same thing, the information you were trying to pass in the
other
paragraph.
one.
So
Okay.
it looked as
So
if it
I'll
was
go over it
paraphrased,
again.
and then and then when you look through that again, that at the top where you have this research. So I'm wondering how that fits into the entire analysis.
So I think I I wanted to just leave everything in here and then maybe separate it out later. Maybe because I have a little bit of a research background and I would like for us to be able to publish, and that's why the research verbiage is in there. So again, it's just at the end of the day, even though at the end it's still what's the monitoring and evaluation. You want to monitor, you want to make sure you got good results, but
Yeah.
publishing is one of the ways where we're able to put information out there so the next person has
Can
more
learn.
information and they can learn, and you're
Okay.
adding to the information that's out there on what worked, what didn't work, and the peculiarities of each population. So
So I understand the confusion from your research background, because the way it is presented, it just comes off as if the entire project is going to be a research project.
no, it is
But
just that.
yeah, so you may need to rework it. I kind of get the idea of that contributing to the body of knowledge. So you may want to do, maybe by the time you get to the project design and then you're building the activities, maybe one of your activities that you're going to do an intervention compendium that then talks about the program, talks about your findings from the field, from the key population, and then that document can serve as something that another organization can even cite or refer to or consult when they're doing a similar project or program. But what I really want us to get right is the argument. We're currently working together, and one of the challenges that I've always, I keep saying that we have, that we've not figured out yet, is what is the need? What is the gap that we're trying to meet here? Find there are some things we decide we want to come in to do because we're interested in them, and then we fund them. But when it now comes to an external donor, it's a different argument. I don't need to convince myself before I say, okay, I can put in £10,000 on a particular project. I believe in it, is my business. But when I need someone else to put in £10,000 into whatever I think that my idea is, I just have to prove and convince that person. And so that's where we are. And so we just have to find a way. I'm happy that you mentioned that you're doing some research to look through other similar programs, look at other gaps somewhere else, and then see what's working. And let's see if we can identify those issues within the key population that we want to work in. So I'm really looking forward to having even that conversation, even within our own one-on-one sessions, to really see what we've been able to find so that we can just get our arguments sorted, because there's a gap there, like I've always said. We've not gotten it right yet. So I'm really hopeful that we'll be able to get that sorted. I like the idea of picking a real specific challenge here for this one you're working on, which is the sexual and reproductive health. And then we need to ensure that where we are targeting, we're really targeting areas where this is a problem. So for instance, a rural community somewhere in Ondo State may be having that challenge. It wouldn't make sense to now assume that for a more urban neighborhood, or where they have public health centers, they have general hospitals, they have access to the internet, they have access to TV, everybody's talking about sexual and reproductive health, they have access to information at the fingertips, that argument will not hold water. But if we're talking about somewhere that is undeniably an underserved or a disadvantaged population and they have these barriers, it's going to make sense. So I want you to also consider those elements as you do the research, as you try to put your information together, consider all of these perspectives. Okay.
So, okay. But anyway, I guess what we find can or will impact how we want to structure the activities and the objectives. But what I was thinking is mostly online educative thing. And even though, of course, somebody in the village somewhere may not have like great internet access, young people also.
We're not in the US, in Nigeria.
I'm asking. Okay.
Okay, so it's going to be good. Remember that okay, what do you want to do here? Remember, I always say, oh, the activities you will drive on your own that you will fund is different from, we will not propose it that same way to a funder. That's because of the gap analysis. So are we trying to get someone to fund, okay, maybe a social media campaign on a specific issue? We need to ensure that our argument is really very strong to say, okay, do these people really not have access to information around sexual and reproductive health? Or what difference, what innovation are we bringing to the campaign? So it will mean more homework for us to do. I know the challenge of you not being on ground and all of that, but we can find a way to ensure that people who really need the information, the access to the information, access to the education, are not deprived again, and we're then targeting an urban population or people who have easy alternatives to find solutions to their sexual and reproductive health issues.
Mm.
So it's one question that we need to ask ourselves and be very critical. Be very critical about ourselves, what we're doing, what we really want to do. And then, like you said, you're going to research similar programs to say, okay, funded programs, or this one that this donor funded, how did you really work? How was it structured? What were the gaps that this project was trying to find? Remember, there was a proposal we worked, was it early this year or later last year, when we went to the donors website to see the programs that they funded. You could see that these were programs that really targeted very vulnerable populations. All of them practically were in really underserved, underprivileged areas. And then they could put money in there. So it's something that we'll really look at and make those hard decisions to say, okay, we can start here, but this is the broader view. This is what we would push to the funder, but we can start doing all these activities to gain momentum. But the broader picture, this is what we're going to do. But it all starts from the analysis, the gaps that we are identifying.
Okay, sorry to keep dragging this.
No, I like.
Since, I don't know, since there, anyway, information needs assessment. I keep digging up work for myself and I hate it, but since we have people that on ground, like,
Yeah.
can we do like a survey, a short survey, and say, hey, we did a survey and this is what we found,
Yeah.
for our local community. Then also, because again, primarily the idea is online for me, and I still believe in it. Again, it may be based on, it's the assumption, anecdote, or whatever. My Twitter reach is not that much, but I could work with people. Maybe we can create a survey also online, anonymous, where maybe like problem areas, because the Gen Z, whatever, people are wild out there, and the things I hear, and I know that we might assume that yes, if you can buy 10,000 naira data per month or whatever, you have access, you live. But again, a lot of these people are actually ignorant. They are consuming garbage, and they are just doing rubbish.
That is the argument that we need to bring into the document.
So, okay, so I guess maybe I'll think about some kind of survey to, maybe we'll do like short Twitter polls.
You see, like in those in our WhatsApp groups, the different ones from the academy, and you see those polls that just pop up, just come. I'm just trying to see, oh, I hope this thing I want to bring in, this thing I want to do is not based on my assumption. So is there anyone here that spilled over from classroom A? Fumi, I don't know if you saw that survey when I said, okay, will you be willing to get on a membership at this amount of money for a month-to-month basis? And you saw the feedback, not sure. And I thought, my assumption was, oh, people are going to jump on it. I mean, it's just $10 a month. But everybody said not sure. So I just killed that product even before trying to go and set it up on a page to say, okay, come and subscribe. I just killed it because it would have failed, because the people that I wanted to my target population said they weren't sure if they even wanted something like that. And then someone said, okay, why don't we do this instead? It's more sustainable. So that's your key population now sharing with you to say, okay, these are the gaps I have. And then, so just test, do some sort of short polls on your LinkedIn, on your Twitter, on Facebook. Even if your population is small, it doesn't matter. Let's just feel people who you feel belong to this target audience that you want to bring this information program to. And then test it. Like earlier this year in March, because last year, because I just moved, you all know the challenges I had with settling in, and I was off social media. I was only working with my one-on-one clients like Folake and the rest of them. And then I popped into the Facebook group and I just did a survey. I wanted to understand the audience within the Facebook group. We had 1,200 people in there. And I did that survey. Over 120 people responded to the survey. And I got to see that all the things I've been sharing all these years, I was just talking on top of their head, over their heads. They did not understand most of the things I was sharing. It was so fascinating. Oh, so this thing, but they could not connect with it because these are people that have not even heard of grant proposal writing, don't know what it is. And here is me, I am sharing technicalities about proposal writing. They will just clap and say it's deep, and then nothing was happening. Not until I did that survey, and then I saw that the key segment of people within that population, the kind of content I need to bring in is something for a newbie. So let's just do that. Just put it out there on LinkedIn, on Twitter, and just do to feel the vibes out there and let it inform even your research from other perspectives that you want to do, maybe publications you want to look at, other organizations, impact report that you want to look at. So I can feel that you feel strongly about the online education and campaign. Maybe I don't yet understand the target population that you're bringing this to. So we'll talk more on it. I'll read more by the time you put those additional information in proposal. I'll see it clearly within the argument that this is the audience, this is a specific population you want to bring it to. You just mentioned something that I said, okay, this is another argument talking about this Gen Z population and all of that. They have access to the internet and all that, but this information is not still accessible to them. They see high level of ignorance, irrespective of the fact that they have access to technology, they have access to these platforms, but they're not paying attention to this. So but you need to bring it into the document, and let's see. Okay, so well done for that. More work for you to do.
Thank you.
All right, yeah. Okay, so Esther.
Yes, good evening, Brooke and everyone.
Hey, good evening.
Yes, so for myself, I hadn't yet started on filling out the information.
Okay.
Yes, but then I'm looking at basically there's a problem that has been identified from one of the places where we're implementing a program with youth.
Okay.
And it's basically mine is around climate change adaptation.
All right.
They are now practically struggling with water accessibility. There's a lot of scarcity right now. So whatever it is that we've implemented in the last 3 months is having issues, be it the small animal husbandry project, as well as the horticultural plants that we give them, the fruit trees.
Okay.
And so I'm trying to look at the gap here basically is the adaptation to climate change and water scarcity. It's a well-known region in Rwanda that has had that issue, even when right now we're in the dry spell, but even before that, when there's that heat wave, it's a big issue there. And so I'm trying now to do research around what other government interventions have happened. And I got to get information that this was about close to 1 M USDs that was put in, and that money was like more or less got wasted. Again, around planting of trees to have a place adapt
trees that
to
are not adaptable to the reality of the extreme weather condition in your region, right?
Yes, they were trying to plant trees to see if that would also help with bringing in a lot of rain, but the climate is just harsh. And so other stakeholders that are still doing the same thing are also struggling. And so for me, that's where the area, the gap is. I want to use information from the Ministry of Agriculture, from the Meteorological Department, Rwanda, we call it Rwanda Meteo, French, and then also the Rwanda Environment Management Authority. I want to get that information to more or less like have a strong justification for why I would want to focus on this area, but then with a focus more or less on empowering women and youth still to adopt these practices.
Okay, so to adopt more practices that are adaptive.
Yes, they're adaptive.
Okay.
So I'm looking at like training programs, but then also looking at the ability to build rainwater harvesting technologies that are basically locally for the local context and affordable.
Okay.
But then also in the long term, I would want something bigger where you'd have like big investments coming in, because it's a very good productive area, but water becomes a challenge.
All right.
Yes.
So I'm seeing some very good gaps here that you've identified.
Yes.
So I would just love to read it in the proposal. Bring all of these elements that you talked about, the research from your Rwanda Metro, all of the essential stakeholders within that value
space.
Is it called that space, that sector. Bring the valuable insight into it. And then it's a good thing that there are a lot of interventions that have been implemented that actually failed to address it.
Yes.
So that's because, so you see, guys, $1 million gone down the drain. It hasn't solved the problem. I know that some of the components of that project were based on assumptions and speculations, and then they did not do their research very well to understand the peculiarity. Maybe they just saw the program model in Brazil or somewhere and then decided to bring it to Rwanda. So do your research very well, understand the local issues, the peculiarities within that region where you want to work. Climate change does not express itself or manifest itself the same way everywhere. So what are the peculiarities, the peculiar impacts, the peculiar root causes within your space? And then build that argument in the document. Don't even start thinking of activities, what you love to do now, whether it's training or harvesting, or do your research and find all of the factors and build that argument first of all. Then from week 2, it will flow into the design of the intervention you want to propose. So focus on the problem, leave the activities for now. Focus on the problem and do that analysis, okay? So Phumzile.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you for sharing that. Thank you so much. So after Phumzile, we'll go to Grace.
Okay. Thank you, Ruki. Good evening, everyone. Mine is kind of crazy. I'm sure when you saw a bit of background on my organization, you were like, yeah.
I skipped that part. You know, any section that I have not told you to write, I don't read it. I have plenty of things to read. I have a lot of things to read. And so I just went straight to problem analysis.
Yeah.
And then when I saw what you wrote, you saw my comment. Pretty long.
Yes. Yeah, pretty long. So I must probably first say that I didn't really do due diligence because I think I'm so spread out and I've spread myself out too thin. And I think as I'm listening to most of my colleagues, I'm realizing, Guti, maybe one of the disadvantages that I have is, as an organization, we have like 4 different pillars that are not so related. We don't have one specific problem that we have identified and are solving and are dedicating all the energy we have towards. So that I find myself not fully zooming in on the core of the organization, because there are 3 other programs that we have that focus on different target groups also.
Okay.
So now when it came to the problem statement, I wasn't sure whether I want to look at the education advocacy programs, which is targeted at children at primary school level, or should I look at the entrepreneurship development thing that I'm doing for the rural communities? So I was like, I'm a multi-headed kind of a
You're confused.
So yeah, so now as I'm sitting here in class, I'm realizing that I think I have to even go back as far as identifying exactly what we really want to do and focus on it, because now it limits me. Even when I'm doing my problem statement and I go to the problem tree, because by the way, I didn't have enough time to even sit and listen to the video fully, because I had community outreaches. I was giving out school shoes, and then I'm doing an outreach program for an orphanage that needs beds and this and that. So already in this week, I'm doing two things that don't even correlate. So I have to look at different potential donors for this, and then I'm looking at. So by the time I have to come to this one, which is my core, which is entrepreneurship development for youth and women in rural areas, I didn't have time. But then as I'm listening to all the team members talking, I have developed solutions, but without really getting to the core and the
I don't
heart
even know
of
what
the
those
issue.
solutions are addressing.
Yeah, it's just an assumption based on my own observation and what I think is gonna work. So as I'm listening here, I'm realizing, okay, I've not actually gone to the heart of what my people in this rural community are battling with. So mine is to actually drive and go back there to the mountains and actually talk to the mamas there and talk to the young people, talk to the females and the males themselves, and really understand, so that I can see that these training programs that I'm busy looking funding for, it's really what's gonna, yes, I know that that's what they need, but maybe even my approach is really not working.
So at the end of
And
the day,
perhaps
the approach. Let me ask you
Yes.
one question.
Yes.
The children you provided
Yes.
school shoes for,
Yes.
are the children in the orphanage, but are the children in an orphanage that you're supporting, or these are children in the community?
Okay. It's two. Let me try and define it. I've got a program that focuses on orphans, and then we go to the orphanages themselves, where we just provide social needs like your blankets, your clothes, the food, and try and help them establish gardens so that they can self-sustain themselves. And there's the other
Through the
element,
gardens?
like vegetable gardens. We help them establish their own, so that they can be able to get their spinach, their cabbages from their gardens, rather than always expecting the grants, social grants from the government or donors from your food retailers. So we're trying to help them to get themselves self-sustainable, because lately in South Africa, things are really tough when it comes to getting donations and funding and all of that. It's shrunk a lot. So you find that
it's everywhere, it's global.
Yeah, it's global. Yes. So we're trying to do a mindset shift on them, expecting help always, to say, but you've got pieces of land in the orphanages, try and start vegetable gardens. We'll then try and engage the relevant stakeholders like the Department of Agriculture to come and assist them establish their little gardens, and also a bit of poultry so that they can get their protein there. At the same time, it's teaching the kids at the orphanage that the whole thing, which you don't have to wait for someone to come and help you. You can start somewhere, and then help will come.
It's actually viable. It's actually a viable idea, because as you're sharing, you're also talking about the gaps. I could link it to see, some of the gaps that you are trying to fill here, where the over dependence of these orphanage homes and centers on donations, which is not sustainable. So there's a problem of sustainability
Yes.
for those centers, and then you're bringing in a model in a way that builds the capacity to find solutions
Yes.
their own needs instead of relying on donations, and then which leaves them even more vulnerable or at the mercy of people who are not even consistent. So it's a good thing that you're developing. It's nice. But like I said at the beginning, what we're trying to build here in grant writing mastery, beyond focusing on one program that you have to create within the proposal, you're building a particular skill set that you can deploy in different situations you find yourself. So you may find yourself in an opportunity whereby, they just want to know your existing solutions or interventions you're driving, and then they may want to fund you. Sometimes, most likely when you're pursuing open opportunities, so you go to Funds for NGO, you've identified 2 grants you want to apply for. And in that case, there are factors that you have to consider beyond yourself. You need to also think about the mindset of the funder, what you're looking at, the key activities that they're interested in funding, or their approach to development. And so you need to build that into your solution. But for now, just focus on one core problem. If you want to develop what you're already doing with the orphanages, and then building sustainability, ensuring that orphanages have this more financially sustainable model, a self-sufficient model, you can develop that idea. If you want to develop the idea of, okay, you want to meet the gap being faced by vulnerable women and young people in your community, even if you have 10 problems that your organization is focusing on, focus on one for this specific program and develop that. You can always reapply the capacity that you have built into to solve other problems.
Okay.
The most important thing is the capacity, the skill set you develop in, the mindset you develop in which to approach any kind of opportunity. All right. Okay.
Okay.
So I'm looking
All
forward
right.
to receiving your document. Let's see the argument that you put up in for your project. Okay. So focus on try to finish the program, the training video for week 1, because guys, week 2, you're watching 4 hours of training.
Yeah.
It is what it is. I've tried, like the last cohort, I looked at it, I was almost tempted to record new set of videos where people would just watch a 30-minute video for 1 week, but it would just dilute everything, and then the whole process would just go to waste. And then I just decided to leave it the way it is, and that. So you have 4 hours of training to go through for week 1. You don't want to pile these things up. All right.
Okay.
Well
done, Coach. I will go over.
I'm looking forward to seeing your document. All right. And then Grace, what problem? Just give us a rundown of the gap, that particular needs that you would like, that you have identified for a specific population that you would like to build on and find opportunities for. Grace, are you here? Grace Aid? Grace from Grace Aid. Are you here?
Hello.
Hello, madam. How are you?
Yes, fine. Thank you. Good evening, everybody.
All right. Good evening.
Well, this is Grace from Grace Aid International Foundation. We deal on women empowerment, women and children, and then empowerment, poverty alleviation, and so on. But for the purpose of this program, I want to concentrate on poverty reduction, reducing poverty.
Okay.
Yes, reducing or preventing poverty within 200 to 500 women in a certain area in Kaduna State of Nigeria, where I am based.
Okay, so it's good. You're focusing on poverty. You're focusing on specific women. These women, is there any specific criteria? Are they widows? Are they single mothers? Or they're just in an economically vulnerable state, and then you want to pull them out of that situation?
Yes, that particular area has suffered terrorism, kidnapping at the farmyard, in their farm yards and so on and so forth. So
All right.
these negative activities by the terrorists, kidnappers, herders,
All right.
has thrown a lot of them into poverty.
Poverty. That
Because
means,
most of-
from what I'm saying there, because I'm just trying to help you blow up the problem, so you see what you need to put into the document, and then so
Yes.
you are finding out that you are picking out some of the root causes of that poverty is as a result of insurgency, is as a result of security issues, insecurity, and
Yeah.
then these insecurities affecting their livelihoods. So
Exactly.
it's a good thing that, okay, you have identified a clear community where they have a need, there's a gap, high level of poverty. So, but I want to see the discussion inside your proposal. Just pour your ideas. I don't know, have you gone through the first training video? I remember you sent a message about how to access it.
Yes, you did that. I've gone through it. Yes, it helped me. I'm still going to go through it again and again, because
beautiful.
Yes, when I went through first time, by the time I got through again, second time, the third time, I was able to understand all that, what you are talking about. And I know that when I watch more, I will understand more again.
Beautiful. I'm happy
Yes.
to hear that.
Yes.
So,
yes. Thank you so much for that.
You're welcome. So guys, I want, Grace, I want you to put these ideas together the way you can in the document. So if you open the application form, everybody fill your information page, that email, phone number, just fill it completely. One of the things I observed in the training is I didn't really talk about the project title. Now I now observe that I didn't really talk about how to frame the project title, but at least let your project title present what you're trying to do. Like for one of the documents I reviewed, I said, for example, if you're trying to solve the problem of conflict or insurgency in let's say in the whole of Nigeria, you can say resolving violent conflicts in Nigeria. Just a full sentence, not too long, not too short, that just states what you're trying to achieve here. Enhancing economic sustainability of orphanages in South Africa. Strengthening systems for climate mitigation in Rwanda. Let the title just, so if someone looks at the title, they know what the problem, they just know either the problem you're trying to solve or the solution you're trying to drive. So that's just my advice for framing your title. So complete that first page and then work on your problem analysis, because without that, you cannot move over to project design, regardless of whether you are implementing a project already. You cannot tell a funder this is the solution when the funder doesn't understand the problem you're trying to solve and why he should care about that problem. So in the document, you're just trying to convince the funder to care about that problem, why it should matter to them, and why they should put in money to solve the problem. Now, I may have to meet you, Grace.
Yes.
Background noise coming from your end. So one thing I want us all to realize is that you may have a good argument or a need that is in existence. You identified it is not based on assumption or speculation. You have created a project that sounds good, or you have even piloted the project and you are getting results. But the funder may not still be interested because of this. Maybe that project, you can easily sustain it if you think of more cost conservative ways of running your programs, or there are alternative ways to solve that problem that may be cheaper than the way your project is already currently structured. So these are factors that we need to pay attention to know that there are alternative ways. When you did your analysis, you saw that you can't even address all of these challenges with one project. So you need to pick, while picking a pathway, you have to consider all of these factors. So I know by the time you go through the training for week 2 and then you start building the project, I want you to pay attention to all of this. I always say this, we're very passionate people, and so we get emotionally attached to our projects. I am like that too, but I had to like question some of the services that I've designed before, some of the programs. This is not my first program. I've lost count of the group programs that I've developed over the years. But I just had to tell myself the truth. This one, is it really going to give the result? Have I put in a lot of, maybe some things that are essential, but it makes the journey longer. It makes it longer. Then there are other alternative routes that can just bring people straight into the solutions or into the outcomes that it is there. And I had to kill some of those programs and services. And then right now, I'm heavily invested in grant writing mastery. Heavily invested in it, because I've been building on it, looking at, oh, what are the gaps, trying to, I've validated it over and over again. And then I'm even, from September, there are additional components I'm adding that I've identified that this is a gap, that this particular population is facing. And then I need to put up a platform that bridges that gap for that component. So I just want to encourage us to emotionally detach from the current programs we're running, so we can objectively be able to identify the needs in the community. Just make that, come out of that space a bit, and then question some of the things that you do to say, okay, is this thing really meeting a need? If it does not pass the test, just let it go or adapt. That's why you just need to be flexible. And then so you can make the changes, you can make the adaptations. It's not about just going and then we're pumping money into activities and then we cannot really tell what the results of those activities are. Kill it, let it go. Do the analysis clearly, be sure that these are the gaps we want to address so that you can be clear about the outcomes. By the time you get into week 2, which we are getting into week 2 after today, you're going to watch the master classes for the technical terminologies that you will find in proposal writing, what they mean, what you need to look out for, how you need to think through to be able to develop those ideas, and then coming down to structuring the project using highly technical tools like Logframe. You would see why it is really very important to do a thorough and in-depth problem analysis. Okay, so I think everyone has shared. Olamide Charles, welcome to the class. Though you joined in late, we had done a kickoff session, but I just want you to share the gap. I'm assuming that you've kind of got, by now you know what we're discussing. We're all talking about the need, the target population that you want to work with, the need that you are addressing. At least for you, let's start from there, because by the time you watch the training workshop for week 1, you'll be able to know what is expected and what kind of information you should be putting together in the problem analysis section of the proposal document. So what gap have you identified that your organization is addressing, and then you would want to push those ideas to be able to get funding for?
All right, thank you so much, Coach Ruki. Good evening, everyone. All right, I don't think I have to do any introductions here. I'm going to attempt your question by saying that target audience, first of all, are teenagers. Okay. And then the proposal or the project, well, the problems that we intend to provide a solution for is, I think I would just call it mind engineering.
Don't talk about the solution yet, though. It's the problem. The solution can be. Let's talk about the problem. Try to convince us that it's even important. What you want to do.
All right. I think I'm going to pick up from where one other person's, left off. I think she was trying to address the fact that there's a lot of garbage, on the internet, and the internet is a huge rave. yeah, the internet is a huge rave. Everybody's trying to be online. Everybody's trying to, just make as much money as is available online. And I've noticed that over time, there is a misunderstanding of what the internet actually entails. People don't see the internet for all the right or positive energy that it brings. They only have mastered, just another side of it that is actually counterproductive. So it is very common to see young adults, teenagers basically, aspiring to become, maybe hair vendors online. They are just doing a whole lot of petty stuff that actually kind of just help encourage, promiscuity. And I don't want to sound very condescending, but I think that's like a challenge I've noticed among these teenagers, and specifically the female population. And I would not say just specifically female population, because I think there's also a pandemic with the teenagers, on the other side of the spectrum. That's the male gender, right? And I've noticed that it's either they are towing the path of, internet fraud, or the females are towing the path of, promiscuity. They call it on scale, hookup, and all of this. Or maybe they even call it dating, casual dating boys just to make money and make ends meet. I've had students that seemed bright, because I actually work as a tech educator in a Unity school. In Unity schools, really, I manage some locations in the south of Nigeria. But yeah, so I've noticed that most of these kids don't aspire to do much with life, especially on the internet, aside being on these left sides, of the spectrum, on the wrong side of it. Either they're becoming internet fraudsters, or they're encouraging, promiscuity, runs, and all of these things, right? So the challenge here, or that's really the challenge I've observed. So the attempt is to, create a program that would help us reach out to these children, and then make them begin to gravitate by first exposing their minds to more opportunities, because you can only think of your society based off what you have been trained to see in your society. So if you don't see much, you can only interpret everything based on what you have seen, right? So that's the first responsibility we have. It is first to show them that there are many other opportunities on the internet. There are many other things, Mark Zuckerberg's Facebook is another man's idea. Tesla is another man's idea. In fact, Microsoft Word and all this Microsoft Office, in fact, Windows operating system is another man's idea. And the reason why these are popular is because a man stood, created, and then made all of this possible. And that's the essence of this outreach, is to bring them to a place where they're able to see that they can also create value. They can create real value that can be celebrated and can really, find, economic value, as it were, that actually adds up and helps ameliorate the poverty that is around them. And so that's the first part. But then the major focus is actually mind engineering, bringing people to a place where they're able to see that they were created to do more than just, hustle and survive.
All right.
That's about it.
Thank you for sharing. So by the time you get your 2 kids, you go through the training for week 1 and you do your analysis, you see that there's a lot more gaps that you would have to identify and bring into the argument before you even start talking about your mind re-engineering program and all of the program. So detach yourself from the program first, and then focus on understanding the problem. So it's just like a medical doctor. When you're talking to a medical doctor, and then if you're a medical doctor and then a patient comes to you, and then you're already thinking, okay, I'm going to give anti-malaria, I'm going to give antibiotics, and then I'm going to do this and that, even without really understanding the peculiar issues with that patient. All right. So wear the cap of a medical doctor. You have patients that you're going to attend to, and then do the needful by trying to understand the problem, do all the tests, the checks, the scans, and everything. Identify what the gaps are before you then build a plan, a treatment plan for that patient. Now, what most of us do is we just see someone that has a headache, and we just create a treatment plan without really understanding the root causes of why that patient has headache, and then try to build into mitigating those issues why they keep having persistent headache over time. Someone has persistent headache, you're always giving paracetamol, then you graduate to what's the other one called, ibuprofen, diclofenac, and all that, without knowing maybe there are more structural issues with the person's body's anatomy or whatever. I'm not a medical doctor, it's Dr. Folake here that's a medical doctor, but I just wanted to use that analogy so we can understand what we are trying to do. We are treating people without understanding the sickness they have. So let's come back and then understand what we're trying to do here. Okay, so you get all those materials and all of that. And then for week 2, I'm going to try as much as possible to ensure that these live clinics do not go more than 2 hours. As much as for the last, but there are very many. At times we're spending 4 hours, but it gets so overwhelming and draining, and then lose productivity. So I want to ensure that we do not go more than 2 hours, and yeah, 1 hour 30 minutes is fine. Okay, so thank you. Everyone has shared. I hope I've not missed out on anybody. Yeah, we have some people that didn't show up live today. Clinic, I wonder why. So the next on our agenda is looking at the work for week 2. So for some of you, those of you that have sent in your documents, I've reviewed, I've identified the gaps, please ensure that you quickly address those things, so it doesn't, by the time the one for week 2 will join, and then week 3, the whole document will just be scattered. So clean it up quickly. And then for week 2, we're getting into project design. This is where the work is. You've done your problem analysis, you understand the gaps. For those of you that have not done it, please take your time, get your pencils and paper, and then document. As you're looking for the information, you're consulting with people, you're having a phone call with a key stakeholder from the target population where you're working. Don't do these things based on assumptions and speculations and your own opinion. Consult other people, consult providers, key stakeholders within that problem, the framework of that problem you're trying to address. Talk to them, understand their perspective, look for publications around what you're doing, especially from development organizations, especially from the government agencies that are relevant for that problem you're trying to solve. Key international organizations working on that area, they have, many of them have baseline surveys, they've done surveys, they've done assessments that you can just look through. Some of them, their impact reports for the organization. You'll be able to see information about the sector where you want to work. Do that analysis, sketch it up, so that week 2, we're watching 2 particular training. I'm telling you the training is 4 hours, so you prepare your mind. Maybe at the end, maybe it's just like class discussions and then you can forget about that, but the real content, focus on the content. You have 2 trainings for week 2. The first training covers the technical concepts and terminologies in grant proposal writing, in project development, and then what they mean, the way to frame them. By the time a funder is asking you, what are the outcomes? So you see the funder asking you, state your project objectives or discuss your project objectives, and it's going further to ask you, what are the outcomes? And then what are results? And you can get confused. So that's what the first training is focused on. And then looking at, we use a case study for an agricultural project, looking at a project at a glance, a more simplified way of framing your project. And then the second training video focus on using logical framework, a log frame, a results framework to develop a project. It's a more technical way of designing project. I wanted you all to have those 2 in case you find yourself applying to a funder that wants you to create a log frame for your project so that you'll not be caught off guard. So it's a lot of work for week 2. I'm just giving us all a heads up. And so when you go through those 2 training videos, the sections of the proposal you have to work on. Remember, I've dropped this schedule in the class. I'll put it again for the benefit of those that have just joined. You're going to be doing the program activities, the project activities section. Now that you've done your problem analysis, the problem statement, you work on the project activities section. you work on the program methods and design. There's a project activity section where for that particular template you're using, they want you to discuss your objectives and the activities that you want to do, the project activities that you're going to do to solve that problem, how these activities help you achieve your objective. That's one section. And then they're giving you another section again to discuss how the project will work. What is the mechanism behind this, your solution? How would all the moving parts work together to address the problem? It's going to be very interesting because you go back and forth on the different sections. And then I would encourage you all to use the logical framework template and create a log frame. Although this particular funder, the one we're working with, this US Embassy Abuja, they do not actually require you to submit a logical framework. But I just want you all to understand how to create a log frame for your project. So do that. But the most important thing is work on the project activity section of your proposal template, work on the project design and methods section. So that would be the work for week 2. And just to reinforce again, every week you should be working on it, because if we all pile up and then, like for some people from the first session that are now saying they are going to continue, at the end they saw that they were just halfway through. I want a situation where by the end of the 5 weeks, which is September 2nd, you have completed all the sections, you have reviews, you know what you need to do to strengthen each part of the proposal, and then you're ready to go and find grant opportunities out there and then use your content to make your application and submit the proposal. Right now, for the July cohort, they've all organized themselves to pay for a yearly subscription for Forms for NGO. They are doing that on their own. I just advise, gather yourself together, subscribe to it, put monies together, pay for the subscription. I've taught them in the last session how to work through the platform and find opportunities. And then I give them a deadline that by August 19th, they need to send me evidence to show that they have made one funding application. Okay, so that's what we're going to do again in this cohort. At the end, what you have worked on, you use it to apply for a funding opportunity live. All right. Okay, so that's it. Are there any last questions that you want to ask? And then we'll close out for tonight so you can rest and prepare for service tomorrow.